Hey everybody out there, this is Seto, and today for you guys we're going to be talking about something that a lot of you guys have asked me to talk about in the past, I guess you could say. Just talk about deck choices and how to build a well-rounded constructed deck and bring it all together and make the deck function properly. So I'm just going to go over some of the key points and talk about some of the key points that I've always tried to apply to many of the decks that I've built over the course of Yu-Gi-Oh! These are points that pretty much have stuck with me, some things I picked up along the way, to build well-rounded constructed decks. Now we're not talking about specific archetypes. I may reference specific archetypes or specific things, but this is just the overall summary. We will probably make another video in the near future talking about main meta and how to apply certain decks to the main meta and things of that nature. So let's go talk about some of the things and list off some of the things that we're going to be talking about in today's video. So some of the things we're going to be talking about, and by the way I have a notepad here, so I got some of the things written down here for you guys. So if I look down, that's what I'm looking at. We are going to be talking about for deck building skills. Consistency is something you have to keep in mind. How the deck works together, so how all the card interactions work. Card interaction, how the decks work together. You have to keep in mind your end goal, which I'll talk about very shortly. Then we have to talk about the meta, what you're usually going to be going against, what mainly people are playing around you. And then you're going to be talking about the weak and strong points of your deck. So every deck has its weak and strong point. It has a good point and has a weak point, and you have to try to work that out. So we're going to be talking about that as well. So let's first talk about your end goal, or your overall objective, I guess you could say. Because you can't, when you're building a deck, you have to keep in mind, you can't just make your deck all willy-nilly. You can't have it doing 50 billion different things. Yeah, that's cool, that's awesome, that's how they do it in the show, but in real life, that is never going to work. And I do apologize for the plane going overhead. So we'll just let the plane go by. But yes, this is something that you can never do, actually. You can't have your deck try to do a million different things. Yeah, watching the anime, watching the show, it's really cool. They have a whole bunch of different cards, and just randomly, Yugi has Exodia in his deck. You can't do that. You can't be like Yugi and just have random 5 pieces of Exodia in your deck and draw it all. You want to try to make your deck maybe do 1 with 2, maybe 3 different things at the most. And what I mean by that is, yeah, you have your main objective of what your deck does, but your deck can maybe synchro summon, or it may do other things by using other resources. So a good example we'll use is battling boxers. So battling boxers with my battling boxer deck, yes, I can make lead yoke, I can make exceeds, that's what the deck's about. But on the side note, I have mass commune in the deck to take advantage of dead resources in the graveyard to make synchro summoning monsters, like big beat sticks that can help me out to my end goal of beating my opponent. So every deck's objective should be to beat your opponent, but what does it do? What's its main play? What is its main focus? What does it do? Is it a control-based deck? Is it kind of like Shadol's, where it's pretty much control the board, do what you do best, make your window, make your construct, beat over your opponent, keep abusing your resources, out-resource your opponent, things of that nature? Or is it pretty much like, I guess you could say, like Stellar Knights, where Stellar Knights are pretty much a new age gadget type of deck, where they pretty much consistently pump out rank 4s, that's your goal, to overwhelm your opponent with good exceed monsters and protect your Stellar Knights by using good trap cards that they have at their Solemn Judgment, I guess you could say, they have of their deck. Or I guess you could say with Ice Bear, oh my gosh, Ice Bears, they don't have no objective, but that's the point. That's what you have to keep in mind, is your end goal. What is your main objective of the deck? Then let's talk about some other things. How about card interaction and ratios, we'll talk about, I guess. So first let's talk about ratios. Now, there's a rule that I'm going to probably talk about in the near future, which I brought up a long time ago for my friend that I learned this rule, and he called it the rule of 2. Now you may ask yourself, what does the rule of 2 mean? So pretty much he told me this, that anytime I was in doubt about how many to run of a card, run it as a 2 of. That's what he gave me, and I have been applying that rule ever since I learned that rule. Now you may be wondering what exactly the rule of 2 is. So let's take, for example, Necro Valley. Okay, so Necro Valley is a key card of the deck, but how many of it should I run? Well, it's a key card, it's a card that my deck mainly focuses around, so I should run that as a 3 of. Well, on the other side, you may say Gravekeeper's Stele. This is a card that's very good, very awesome, but you don't want to get it early game. You want to get it mid to late game. It's a good top deck, things of that nature. So in that case, even though it's a good card, I would go with the rule of 2, because I think 3 is too much. I think 1 is too little, so go with 2. That is the rule of 2, but we'll talk more about that in a different video. So that's what you gotta think when you're trying to think of ratios in the deck. Is it a key component of the deck, or is it just something the deck can do? Is it a nice card, but is it something you don't want late game? You have to think of your ratios. And then you have to think of your consistency of your deck. I guess you can say it. We'll talk about card interaction next, and then we'll go to consistency, excuse me. So card interaction. Does your deck have problems with certain cards interacting with each other? So I guess a good example right now is Mistake. Some decks are main decking Mistake because they personally believe that it can hurt your opponent more than it's going to hurt you. So your Senjus were used for this example. Your Senjus are a deck that can run Mistake, and it will hurt them because they can't search things with Tenki and everything. But on the flip side, you know, it's going to hurt your opponent most likely more than it's going to hurt you. And what you can do is you can search your cards off, then flip up your Mistake when you have everything you need, and then proceed to whip your opponent's butt to some extent. So that's a card that, yes, it may have some problem being a card interactive problem. It may have some problems, but at the end of the day, it's going to hurt your opponent more than it's going to hurt you. But on the same terminology, you don't want to play cards that are going to ultimately hurt you out completely. They're not going to help you at all. They're very situational type of cards. They don't really work out that much. So one thing that people have been debating about recently is, are battle traps starting to be faded out completely from the game? I know people like Mirror Force a lot and Deep Prison, but is it better to run, a card that's going to help you out more and reach your objective, which is like Mind Crush, instead of running maybe your Mirror Forces or your Deep Prisons? Is that going to be a more helpful card than, Mind Crush, or is Mind Crush going to be more helpful than your battle traps? Or you could also say with your, I guess you could say, excuse me, because I keep looking down my paper here. What was that? Yeah. If you're talking about your card interaction, those cards may be more helpful. But also, you don't want to run things like Macro. You don't want to run things like Defissure in a deck that it's going to hurt, that's graveyard reliant. Yeah, these cards are good and nice, but they're going to hurt you more, they're going to hurt your opponent most likely. They'll hurt you both equally, probably. But then you can sometimes, I've seen players run, they may run in their deck a slight light or dark count. So they may run maybe 3 or 4 lights, and the rest of the deck is dark. So they may run, light and Prison Mirror because of that reason, or they side deck it in. So you just have to think about how your card interactions work. Is it going to benefit you more than it's going to benefit your opponent, or is it going to hurt your opponent more than it's going to hurt you? Because if you don't think of these things, then you're going to be in for some trouble. And you just can't put all your cards in, like I said earlier, willy-nilly and not think about these card interactions. Then I guess you could say you also have to look at, with card interaction, you have to think of the cards, which is something I was kind of just talking about with Mirror Force and Mind Crush. You have to think about the benefits of these cards. But you have to think, is this card well-rounded? Is this card good? I don't want to run Tribute to the Doom because, I'm going to get a neg off that most likely. Maybe I would run Compulsive Area Evacuation Device. Use cards that are more versatile. Versatile cards will help you out in the long run. So, 2 good versatile cards that I'm going to mention right now are Book of Moon and Compulsory Evacuation Device, as well as Regeki. These are 3 good versatile cards, especially Book of Moon and Compulse. Why? Book of Moon can be used to stop an opponent's play. It can be used for the offensive and defensive perspective. It can be used for multiple things of uses. You can even use Book of Moon to maybe flip down one of your flip effect monsters and get it reflipped again, which is something we used to do back in the day, or with Gravekeeper Spy a lot. Also, Compulse, same thing. It can be used on the offensive and defensive, and it can be a disruptive card to stop your opponent's plays. Versatile cards in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Are very useful. Regeki, yes, it's a card that maybe your opponent will get a few pluses off it, but it can disrupt their board. It's a power card that can change momentum in the duel. Just like Snatch and Steal. Yeah, it may not, MST stops it, whatever. It's a momentum swinger, and that is a versatile card in the sense, I guess you could say. And versatile cards always have a place in decks. Those are kind of the staples-esque of nowadays, I guess you could say. So the more versatile a card is, the more use you can get out of it, the more chance you're going to run it. Now some versatile cards may not be good in every single deck, but they can be useful to some extent. And then let us talk about consistency. This is something that we're going to harp on again with like ratios and everything. See how consistent the deck is. See how it works out altogether. Yes, you've done all the theological thinking of the deck, but see how it does when it's on the field being battle tested. A good example is, like a rugged AK-47, if you know military terminology. I would rather have that gun because that gun, I could slam it against the tree, it could get run over, it could get, be out in the snow, have all those dust and grime, but it's consistent as heck. I pull that trigger, it's gonna work. Guns like that, a deck is kind of the same way. Consistent, consistent, consistent. Does it do what it's supposed to do day in and day out to the best of its ability? Does it do that thing very thoroughly? And that's something you always have to keep in mind. And that's why play testing is so important. The more you tweak your deck, the more you fine tune these things, just like you would a car or a sports car, the better it's going to be, and the more prepared and more knowledge you have of all the in and outs of your deck, and be prepared to play it in tournaments. But like I said, we're going to be talking about game and meta in a different video altogether. So the last thing I'll talk about is, because we'll just talk about this last point here, and then later on we'll talk about how you have to adapt your deck to the meta. That'll be a different video for a different day. So the last thing we're going to talk about in deck construction is the strong and weak points of your deck. So this is at the point where maybe you've done your standard trap lineup, your standard spell lineup, your standard monster lineup, things of that nature, but you are looking at your deck and you're saying, this deck needs to get to its combo plays efficiently. So if it does that, you may want to run Upstart Goblin. Cyber Dragons is a good example here. Cyber Dragons need to get all their combo pieces very quickly so they can go off. We're not talking about Infinity, by the way. We're just talking about normal Cyber Dragons here in the TCG at the moment. Or Dark Worlds. They need to get to their discard outlets and their Dark World monsters so they can start their engine and get it online. So to do this, you may want to speed the deck up more a little bit. Or your deck may be a slower deck, so that may be a weak point, so you may want to tune it back with putting more traps. Or your deck may be a deck that makes these big, strong, powerful monsters, but they may be susceptible to maybe spells, but powerful against traps. So to do that, you may want to play some cards that help out and protect your monster. Horus the Black Flame Dragon is a perfect example here. Card's big, card is powerful. Once you get on the board, you can negate all spells. Horus level 8, that is. But it's susceptible to traps. So that, because of that, you run Royal Decrees, and because of that, you may run some pod dualities to make your deck a little bit more consistent to get to those cards, those combo pieces that help get you to level 8, and to get you to your setup where you can beat your opponent. Your end goal. It all goes back to that end goal. So that's something you have to take in consideration. Maybe your deck's an offensive juggernaut, and maybe that's why you need to add combo, draw cards, search cards more to get to those pieces, because that's what your deck does best. Or maybe it may be weak, it may be a slower deck, so maybe you need to add traps. That's what I'm talking about here. That's why you need to think about your strong and weak points of your deck. What does it do best, and what is it very bad at? So that's in conclusion of some of the basic things you need to do when you're taking into building a deck. There may be one thing I forgot, so please forgive me if I forgot something obvious. But these are things you need to take into consideration. I mean, yeah, there's other things you need to take into consideration. The ban list, how much the cards are to build this certain deck, and things of that nature. But we're just talking about generically. So there may be one thing I forgot, so I do apologize for that. And I'm going to leave talking about the meta and how to play in tournaments in a different video. So this is going to be a running segment, I guess you could say, for a while. So I'll talk about the meta game and how you should build your deck according to the meta game later on. But till next time, guys, take care. Have fun dueling. Good luck dueling. Hope you learned something from watching this video. Hope these were some good pointers to help you out when you're building decks. Because I love building decks. I'm kind of like Bastion. I'm kind of like Seto because I have a lot of cards. So I can kind of build a lot of decks at my leisure. To some extent. Not everything, but a lot of stuff I can build. And these are some things I've learned through playing the game and things I've picked up on throughout the course of the game. And I'm giving this information back to you. So, like I said, there may be something I forgot, but please forgive me for that. So until next time, guys, take care. Have fun dueling. Good luck dueling. Have fun deck building. Have fun dueling. And I'll see all of you guys next time. Seto Kaba, I'm out of you guys. Till next time. Good luck dueling to all of you and have a great day. Take care, everybody.